Hi there, welcome to our discussion on Idealists. I'm Jan Shegdev Clarity Coaching, and I'm not sure what's happening with my hair right now, but anyway. So here's what we'll be talking about with Idealists today. We'll talk about first, what makes them tick. Next, a typical career path pattern. Third, how to connect with them and things not to do. Fourth, and then last, we'll finish up with a tip of the day for our Idealist friends. First, what it means to be an NF. So NF means intuitive and feeling. So if you have N and F in your four-letter Myers-Briggs type, you're within this group. So that would be ENFP, ENFJ, INFJ, INFP. And NFs make up 17% of the U.S. population. They're the third largest group after the artisans and guardians that we talked about previously. So what NFs are all about? They're abstract and cooperative, which means they're the exact opposite of artisans. They have in common with the guardians that they're both cooperative, which means whatever data they're looking at, they're using that to enhance society, help humanity grow and develop and be at its best. Communication, community, connectedness are all important values. The difference is that idealists are looking at the set of data in an abstract way, which means they're looking not just at the face value of the data, but what's the principle that this represents, what's the ideal, what can I connect to that's behind this set of data that I can live my life from and be about. And that's really what makes an NF tick, is living out their principles. For that reason, they're often in fields like psychology, sociology, spirituality, literature, art, education at times, but it's those deep subjects that have the potential to move the soul, for example. Soul searching is something that is a way of life for most NFs. It's something they're very good at and they want to help others do, but also is, in a sense, part of their highest calling. Discovering exactly what their place is in the world, and that's something that's a little bit challenging for most NFs. Like all of us, they grow up in a guardian-centric world, which has more linear career paths and things like that you get into. So it can take them a little bit more time to find themselves. NFs are very sensitive people emotionally, and you can see that by looking at what makes up their temperament, N and F. So you can be a feeling, preference, artisan, or guardian, but it's not one of the driving dominant forces behind your personality. With the NFs, the feeling absolutely is. And so exploring feelings, processing what you're experiencing are very big themes for NFs. Others may experience them as moody or too emotional or sensitive at times, which is kind of the downside of their depth of feeling. Something that NFs are really good at typically is creating meaningful, mutually harmonious relationships. That's part of really what they live for. And not to say that other types can't have that, but it's just really kind of part of what NFs are striving for. That and making an impact on the world according to whatever their ideal is. So if their core ideals are around spirituality, you'll probably find them working in some kind of nonprofit or church or missional work. If it's psychology and emotional, then you'll find them there. If it's educational, but whatever it is, it's something about working with others to develop their highest potential. They also have a softness for the underdog and the downtrodden, and making sure that everyone has what they need to grow. So typical career path patterns for NFs, generally because they start out in a guardian world like everyone does here in the US, they start out usually with a more typical career path pattern. Now the exception to this is the NFs that are true artists. Usually can find themselves a little bit faster if their natural bent is in some kind of, painting or sculpture or music. But other NFs eventually find themselves in things like teaching, psychology, sociology, spirituality, something that has to do with personal growth, development, and creativity. Those are usually the themes, all of those together. And like I said, they tend to start out doing something maybe a little bit more mainstream and then have to kind of find themselves afterwards. So it would not be out of character to find an NF that majors in communications or business their first couple years of college and is feeling a little bit unfulfilled with that, and then switches to something more like one of the other categories I described. And really that's a big part of the career path pattern for NFs, is finding themselves and making their own way. So making their own way doesn't mean they have to go out on their own and be entrepreneurial or anything like that, but because NFs are cooperative, that's half of what makes them tick, right? Being connected to the world, supporting others, they tend to sometimes get locked into, okay, what's practical, what should I be doing, what's the best way for me to make money, but when they go those directions, typically they're pretty unfulfilled with their work. So again, a typical pattern would be for them to start out doing something that's a little bit more concrete, a little bit more mainstream, and then find themselves as they go on in their career, which is essential for development for NFs. Other things about career path patterns, typically in whatever group that they're working with, if they're in more of a corporate environment, it's going to be very important to them that they feel connected and a sense of belongingness with the group. Again, that cooperative nature. So if that's not there, that's very stressful. And again, NFs have very sensitive feelings, so if they're in more of a corporate environment, let's say they're in an accounting department, it's less likely that they're going to find other NFs there, and so that can be a stress point. What else do I want to say about career path development for NFs? I think that mostly covers it, but let me know if you have any questions about that. Essentially, the most important thing for them is to find the work that they want to put out in the world and do that. There's other types that can kind of make it without doing what they're absolutely born to do. It's kind of non-negotiable for an NF just because of what makes them tick. They really need to put their work out in the world. So next, how to connect with NFs. The most important thing you can do is try really, really hard to understand them and how they're unique and different. So most NFs feel very unique and different, and they really just want to fit in with everybody else. But they know that, whether they know because they've studied the Myers-Briggs or they just know intuitively, they're that 17% of the population. So there's not a lot of people out there like them, and so they can sometimes feel not totally a part of things. So understanding their feelings, being supportive, and these are the types that really love deep connection. So they're going to love long love letters, special gifts that show that you have been thinking about them, long conversations about their hopes and dreams and passions, any depth in all of its forms. NFs also like to connect over things like, the arts, so going to museums, going to hear the symphony or the opera, and usually something that maybe is a little bit offbeat, and unique can also be an NF quality. Things not to do. The most important thing not to do to NFs is not be willing to meet them on that deep emotional level. Again, creating deep and meaningful relationships is part of what makes them tick, and so they really need to have that. And if it's not happening, that's really frustrating. So people can sometimes experience them as going too deep too fast, or just wanting to have a connection that's at a different level than what they want. So the best thing you can do is be honest about that if you're experiencing that with an NF, and talk about, concretely how you want to be with them, what you want out of your relationship, so at least they can kind of get their minds around that. But definitely don't want to treat them like they're just like everybody else, or that their feelings don't matter, or that art and deep ideals don't matter. Those would also be things that would break connection. So tip of the day for the idealists out there, really be yourself. It's pretty simple. I think the way that NFs work, they're always feeling pressure to be like somebody else, or be like the dominant mainstream, to be cooperative. And so it takes a lot of energy to continually remind yourself, okay, I need to listen to my own inner guidance. I need to take that next step of what I know is important in my life and my life is asking of me. So that's tip of the day for Idealists. Be yourself. Thanks a lot, and see you next week for our discussion on rationals. Bye-bye.